Centralia, Pennsylvania looks normal on a satellite image. A grid of streets in the Appalachian Mountains, surrounded by forest, about 130 miles northwest of Philadelphia. But on the ground, something is wrong. Steam rises from cracks in the pavement. The earth itself is warm to the touch. Trees in the surrounding forest are dead and leafless, killed from below by heat reaching 900 degrees Fahrenheit. Fewer than 5 people live here today. In 1981, more than 1,000 called it home. What happened in between is a story about a fire that was born in a garbage dump, grew into a monster, and swallowed an entire American town. Centralia was built on anthracite coal. The first mines opened in 1856, the Locust Run Mine and the Coal Ridge Mine. By the 1860s, 5 mines operated beneath and around the borough. At its peak in 1890, Centralia had 2,761 residents, 7 churches, 5 hotels, 27 saloons, 2 theaters, a bank, a post office, and 14 general stores. It was a typical Pennsylvania coal town, prosperous and tightly knit, built directly on top of the resource that gave it life. Beneath the streets ran a labyrinth. Decades of mining had carved miles of tunnels and chambers through the coal seams, including the Buck Mountain vein, the Mammoth vein, and several smaller deposits. An estimated 25 million tons of coal originally existed beneath the borough. By the mid-20th century, the anthracite industry was in decline. Oil and natural gas had replaced coal as the preferred fuel. Centralia's population had dropped to around 1,100. The mines were abandoned, but the tunnels remained. Nobody sealed them properly. This would matter enormously. On May 27, 1962, the Centralia Borough Council hired 5 members of the local volunteer fire company to clean up the town landfill. The landfill sat in an abandoned strip mine pit at the edge of town. Memorial Day was approaching, and the council wanted the dump cleared. The firefighters did what they had done in previous years. They set the trash on fire, but this time, the fire found something the previous burns had not. An unsealed opening in the pit, roughly 15 feet wide, connected the surface directly to the abandoned mine tunnels below. A 1958 Pennsylvania law had actually outlawed dump fires for exactly this reason. The risk of igniting underground coal seams was well known. But Centralia's council either did not know or did not care. The trash fire crept through that unsealed opening and made contact with the exposed coal of the Buck Mountain vein. The fire had been born, and nobody realized it yet. The fire was discovered almost immediately. Within weeks, residents noticed foul-smelling gases and unusual heat near the dump site. In August 1962, the state sent crews to dig trenches, attempting to isolate and remove the burning coal. The trenching failed. Digging into the earth actually fed the fire more oxygen, helping it spread faster underground. The state tried again, this time pumping a slurry of water and crushed rock into the mine voids to smother the flames. Winter weather froze the equipment. The volume of slurry was nowhere near enough to fill the vast network of tunnels. Between August 1962 and October 1963, Pennsylvania spent just over $106,000 on 3 separate containment attempts. Every one of them failed. Engineers later estimated that the fire could have been fully excavated and extinguished during this period for a few $100,000, but the money was not allocated. The fire burned quietly for the next 15 years, spreading through the abandoned tunnels at a pace of roughly 50 to 75 feet per year. It moved through coal seams between 150 and 230 feet below the surface. Above ground, life in Centralia continued. Children went to school. Families attended church. Most residents had no idea the ground beneath their homes was on fire. On November 21st, 1979, a gas station owner named John Coddington lowered a thermometer into one of his underground fuel tanks. He had noticed steam rising from a vacant lot next to his station. The thermometer read 172 degrees Fahrenheit. His gasoline was being cooked from below. The state police fire marshal ordered the tanks drained immediately and filled with water to prevent an explosion. Centralia's only gas station closed permanently. Then came February 14, 1981. A 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski was walking through his grandmother's backyard when the ground opened beneath his feet. A sinkhole, 4 feet wide and 150 feet deep, swallowed him without warning. Todd grabbed a tree root and held on. His 14-year-old cousin, Eric Wolfgang, pulled him to safety. When rescuers tested the air rising from the hole, they found lethal concentrations of carbon monoxide. If Todd had fallen just a few feet further, or if he had been unable to grip that root, he would have died from the toxic gas before anyone reached him. The near death of Todd Domboski changed everything. Until that moment, the fire had been an abstract problem, debated in municipal meetings. Now it was a hole in a child's backyard that nearly killed him, and television cameras from across the country arrived to document it. In 1984, the United States Congress allocated $42 million for a voluntary relocation program. Federal assessors evaluated every property in Centralia, and residents were offered fair market value for their homes. Most accepted. Over the next several years, more than 1,000 people left Centralia. 500 buildings were demolished. Streets that had been lined with homes became empty grids, reclaimed by grass and saplings. The churches closed. The schools closed. The post office closed. A stretch of Pennsylvania, Route 61, the main highway running through town, buckled and split open from the heat below. The road was abandoned and rerouted around Centralia entirely. The old highway became known as the Graffiti Highway, covered in spray paint by visitors drawn to the ghost town. In April 2020, the landowners buried it under several thousand tons of dirt, delivered by a convoy of 400 dump trucks. In 1992, Pennsylvania Governor Bob Casey invoked eminent domain on every remaining property in the borough. All buildings were condemned. In 2002, the United States Postal Service discontinued Centralia's zip code 17927. The town was being erased not by the fire itself, but by the bureaucratic systems that had failed to stop it. A handful of residents refused to leave. They filed lawsuits, alleging they were victims of what they called massive fraud. Motivated by interest in the hundreds of millions of dollars worth of anthracite coal still beneath their homes. In 2013, state officials reached a final agreement with the 7 remaining residents. They could stay until they died. After that, their properties would be seized. As of 2025, the Centralia mine fire covers approximately 400 ACREs and continues to spread along 4 active fronts. More than 2,000 boreholes have been drilled to monitor its progress, and the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection conducts monthly inspections. The fire burns at depths of 150 to 230 feet below the surface, consuming coal in seams that extend far beyond the original borough limits. At its current rate of spread, it could eventually reach 3,700 acres. Engineers estimate the fire will burn for another 250 years, and some projections suggest even longer. The coal seams beneath this part of Pennsylvania contain enough fuel to sustain it for centuries. There is no plan to extinguish it. There is no technology that could reach it. The fire will simply burn until it runs out of coal, long after every person alive today is gone. Fewer than 5 residents remain. The town still technically exists as an incorporated borough. It still holds municipal elections, but there is almost no one left to vote. Centralia is often compared to a horror movie. The 2006 Silent Hill film was directly inspired by it. Screenwriter Roger Avery cited Centralia as a creative influence for the fictional town abandoned because of an underground fire. But the real horror of Centralia is not supernatural. It is bureaucratic. The fire could have been extinguished in 1962 for a fraction of what the relocation eventually cost. Every engineer who studied it in those early years said the same thing. The problem was solvable. The money was not spent. What started as a few $100,000 problem became a $42 million evacuation, the destruction of 500 buildings, the displacement of over 1,000 people, and a fire that will burn beneath the Appalachian Mountains for the next 250 years. Centralia is not just a ghost town. It is a monument to what happens when an industrial system creates something it cannot control, and when every institution responsible for fixing it decides that it is someone else's problem. The fire does not care about budgets or elections or jurisdictions. It simply burns, and it will be burning long after the last person who remembers this town is gone.